I've made a lot of Gasland-style wasteland builds out of Hot Wheels cars over the past few years, more than I'm showing here now. But one of my favorite designs that still stands out to me is my Plague Doctor Buggy. I made one of my first embarrassingly bad YouTube videos talking about this car, which I'll link here. Watch at your own peril. Unfortunately, this model has not held up well to the heat and humidity of the Japanese summer, and I used some paints and techniques that haven't really aged well in this environment. I planned on remaking this build at some point in time, but with my recent dabbling in Blender, I decided to try my hand at modeling the whole car from the virtual ground up. Now, not only can I remake this model, but you can too. More about that later. I started with the wheel design since it was an easier entry point into tackling this project. I made two tire designs of different proportions that mimicked the original Tomica ATV wheels. And here you can get a look at the whole model. I'm not going to show you how I made the whole thing, but I will show you a cool new to me technique that I used for making the mask and the body of the car. I start by adding a new plane mesh and placing the cursor in the center. By adding an empty arrows object, I can use it as a point to mirror the mesh across. So I'll add the mirror modifier and select the empty object to mirror from. Make sure it's mirroring in the right plane for your needs and that it's set to merge with itself at the center. I also add the solidify modifier to give it some thickness, and a subdivide surface modifier to add some geometry to the mesh. Now, if you go into edit mode, you can select vertices and edges to move around and manipulate the mesh object. By adding loop cuts with Ctrl R, you can increase the sharpness of the angles and edges. And by extruding edges, you can do some more interesting things like quickly making shapes and extruding them. I'll link to a more comprehensive tutorial if you want to try out this technique for yourself, but it's really powerful. Now that your heads are all spinning, let's pop back to the physical world. Here are the two wheel designs. As you can see, one is more stout and a little smaller in diameter than the other. And if you want to, you can even use axles on different cars if you want to make these roll. I won't be doing that for this model though. I designed the car to print in two halves for easier supporting and for printing. Depending on your printer settings, you might need to file these two nubs down to get the perfect fit. As a compromise between strength and authenticity, I made the hub/brake caliper line up to hide behind the wheel spokes, so be sure to rotate those to the correct position. I added some mesh details here and there, as well as a pretty sturdy front suspension. Resin can be kind of brittle sometimes, and I didn't want anything snapping off. I'm excited to get started painting, so let's give everything a base coat of black. I didn't bother priming, but with a fine surfacer, you could probably fill in some of the layer lines if you have them. I dry brushed the tires with a dark gray, and I started painting all of the frame and suspension with a metallic silver mixed with a bit of brown. The engine and armored cage got a lighter overbrushing of silver to keep the black in the recesses. And the plague mask itself got built up in several layers, starting with this blue-gray, followed by selective applications of dark brown blended with the blue, burnt umber washes over most of the vehicle, and varied coats of orange and brown, stippled kind of haphazardly. When you add layers of paint like this, it can give a subtle texture. For the body, I started with a kind of magenta color, but I switched to a darker, more opaque purple. And after adding some white to the purple, I did some edge highlighting here and there. Followed by some rusty streaking to wrap it all up. Now, I went with the stouter style wheel for this example because I prefer them on this car. I think they really fit well and they glue on easily to the hubs. And with it all glued together, I dusted on some crushed pastels, focusing on the lower portions of the buggy. And here it is next to the original. It's a faithful enough copy that I had a lot of deja vu while I was painting, and I even forgot it was a 3D print at times. Now, you're all probably wanting to know where to get this model, and there's a few options available to you. I made a Cults 3D page, and the link will be down below. At the time of posting this video, I'm actually offering the unsupported version for free, and the supported version for just a couple bucks. I hired a professional to do the supports, and they're insanely well done. The other way to get the files is by joining my Patreon, where I upload my 3D designs as much as possible, and all of the files for this buggy have already been available there for a few days. Consider joining such lovely people as Jimmy G, Adam, Andrew Price, Michael Doughty, Spaghetti a la Mode, Harker, Kitsch, Paul Bechtel, as well as all of my dollar store enablers. And a big thank you to my two newest patrons, JC Hayes and John Stamosification. You guys are the best. Go paint my buggy, and I'll see you on the next build. Oh hey, if you made it this far in the video, here's a little bonus build. It's called the Paddy Wagon. Add some kind of comment about that, so I know you made it all the way to the end.